Retail employees. What are your Black Friday horror stories? Story 1. An 80-year-old grandma tackled and mace-sprayed a woman over fleece fabric at my store. The old lady wanted a cancer pink ribbon fabric, and the woman she ultimately tackled had called ahead and ordered a bulk amount of it because she works for a cancer organization and makes blankets for cancer patients. The woman was wheeling a cart in the store with several large bolts of the fabric in it, which she had special ordered, and we put it in the cart for her so she could continue shopping. The old lady sees that this woman has all the bolts, and it isn't right that she's hogging the entire stock of that particular print. The woman explained the situation and that she, in fact, special ordered these, and that the reason she was coming in on Black Friday to purchase them is because there was a major Black Friday promotion at 60% off. The old lady continues to yell at the poor woman. The woman very calmly keeps trying to reassure her that she's not taking any of the store stock, and that she makes blankets for dying women with cancer. She's a very sweet store regular who pays out of pocket for all the blankets, and so my store held the fabric for her until Black Friday, when she would come in and purchase them with her coupon. The old lady doesn't give a crap, whips out mace and tackles the woman. The old lady gets kicked out of the store. She would come in once every couple of months, give me the stink eye, and then rebelliously write down the recipes from the home and food magazine so she wouldn't have to buy them. Then she'd scurry out and come back in a few months. If I expected anyone to bring mace to a Black Friday sale, it certainly wouldn't have been an 80-year-old woman. Jeez. Story 2. I was hired as a seasonal worker at Best Buy. Just put in my 2 weeks notice. I'll still be working Black Friday and I'm terrified, but oh well. I worked on computers for tax-free weekend in August, which is the biggest sale for computers. I had a similar situation. I was in the special roped-off section with cages full of Apple products, counting inventory because the computers take 5 hours to update the system. We were out of MacBook Airs except for a few in the pre-ordered cage. A customer walks into the roped-off section. Already not okay. He's no more than 25 and looks well off. He says he came over to see if we were really out of MacBook Airs. I say we are, but he's welcome to order at customer service and get free shipping. He sees the laptops in the pre-order cage and starts trying to bargain, saying he can just refund whoever pre-ordered it. I politely decline, and he starts to throw a temper tantrum, foot stomping and all. He uses excuses like needing to write an essay and how his mommy only gave him enough money to buy the computer this weekend. At this point, I'm just watching, rather confused at the temper tantrum someone my age is having. He stomps away, pushes over the rope pole, and even kicks a stand, only to stub his toe and then continue to make a scene about that. Story 3. My first and only Black Friday was my worst. I was 18 and working in digital imaging at Best Buy. To keep the story short and sweet, there was your typical awful $100 laptop people were flipping their heads over on Black Friday. I saw a mother tell her 10-year-old son to run into the horde of idiots to grab one, thinking his youth would save him from any harm, I guess. The kid actually manages to wiggle his way through the crowd and grab one, only to be picked up under the arms by a 20-year-old and, no joke, thrown backwards into a display of flash drives. The 20-year-old grabs the laptop from the kid and runs like the wind. The kid cries, and the mom, hearing her son cry but unable to see him, proceeds to lose it. She looks at us at the cash registers like we're responsible, and starts to scream at us to call the cops. I don't know what to think about the whole ordeal. Of course, the 20-year-old is a jerk and is probably the worst person in the story, but the mom is what always agitated me. What in God's name was she thinking bringing her kid to a 4 a.m. mosh pit, in hopes his bright-eyed, cheerful face would protect him from a typical Black Friday madhouse? The story does have a happy ending. I got the heck out of retail and never had to experience another one of those ever again. What happened to the mom and son and the other guy? Hell if I know. Story 4. I work back of the house at a Toys R Us. I spent Black Friday taking big-ticket items to the back where we just loaded them into the customer's car instead of trying to make our way to the front of the store. Apparently, someone decided it was fine to wander into the back storage room and start opening boxes to find what they wanted. Other customers saw this one idiot do it and then decided it was okay if they did it too. Myself and the other back of the house guys were busy wrestling with a really obnoxious bed set, so when I made it to the other side of our back storage, I found like 8 to 10 people just taking cases off our bays and opening them, then tossing them aside if they didn't want it. They claimed there was nothing indicating they couldn't come back there. We have 2 signs on the swinging doors saying, "Employees only" and "Warning, only authorized personnel beyond this point." Signs are more of a suggestion to them, clearly.
Shh, here's a little secret for you. This video is sponsored by none other than me and my team at Rufus Rugs. We're the masters of creating custom, hand-tufted rugs that capture who you truly are. Whether you want to transform one of our intriguing thumbnails into a rug, for a friend, obviously, or you're craving a room makeover with awesome anime-inspired designs, we've got your back. Oh, and did I mention, each and every rug is skillfully handcrafted by me and my friends. No BS dropshipping gimmick here. You'll be blown away by your rug. Hit the first link in the description to learn more.
Story 5. Around 10 years ago, I worked for Best Buy. I was hired as a seasonal employee while in college and actually enjoyed working there most of the time. Unfortunately, Black Friday ended my enjoyment of the big box retailer. The year that the PS2 came out, I was in charge of issuing the systems to customers with vouchers. The ones who stayed all night camping out, The customers would approach me, and I kept 2 systems in my arms at a time and would go from the stockroom to the floor in order to give out each system. On one trip out of the stockroom, a gentleman, early 40s, approached me and proceeded to try to yank a system out of my hands and run with it. As an aside, I'm no small fellow. As the immature gentleman attempted to grab and go, I simply tightened my grip and calmly said, "Your ticket first, sir." He rebutted with, "I don't have a ticket, and I don't need one. I've seen this thing first, so it's mine." After a brief explanation of the voucher system, the man and his wife only seemed more angered that I refused to surrender the PS2. To really convince me to give him the system, the gentleman then proceeded to say, "Okay, well, I guess I'll have to rough you up for it." Perhaps out of my own naivete or the adrenaline, I responded, "Sounds great. Let me clock out first and I'll meet you outside shortly." A little taken aback by my response, the gentleman started to profusely apologize and even teared up, giving me some sob story over why he deserved it. Of course, I didn't surrender the system. Needless to say, this was one of the reasons I do not hang around Best Buy for much longer. Sheer stupidity. A grown man trying to fight a 19-year-old who made $8 an hour for a video game system? Brilliant. Story 6. I had just undergone shoulder surgery the day prior to Thanksgiving. My boss told me I had better show up, and I liked my job at Circuit City at the time. Not for the job, but for the coworkers. So I showed up at 5 a.m. just hours post-op. I was there in a shoulder sling, popped a Percocet, and started the day. My job was to handle the computers, so I dealt with the onslaught of people pushing me over to get free CDRs, literally pushing me over. I fell down on my shoulder after some mother pushed me over a little kid, no lie. To squelch the pain, I took a Percocet. Around 9 a.m., a man came in wanting to buy a CRT monitor, those big heavy ones. He had a bunch of other items and wanted me to carry the monitor out to his car. I objected, but he started getting upset. So I dragged the monitor with my good arm and put it into a cart. I pushed it out to his car, put the monitor in, and the guy drove away without thanking me. I turned around and bumped into a customer with my bad arm. This sent a discharge of extreme pain running throughout my body, so I went inside and took a Percocet. Flash forward to around 11 a.m., customers look like blurs and I find myself drooling a little bit. A customer comes up and asks where he can find the monster cable. I found the idea of a monster cable to be hilarious, so I laughed maniacally in his face. He backed away and asked another employee. I then proceed to sit in a computer box and tell stories about the adventures of Black Fridays of yore. Customers guarded their children. Nobody bothered me. This went on for a good 10 minutes in real time, which felt like 3 hours to me. The manager in my department walked over to me, grabbed my good arm, and escorted me out of the building. She looked at me and said, "I'll see you tomorrow at 8. I missed my next shift. I can't believe that guy saw all the people in that store and decided to ask a guy in a cast to carry something heavy for him. If you don't want to be as dense as this guy, leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel." Story 7. I haven't told this story in a while, so I worked for Mrs. Fields Cookies in my local mall during Black Friday back when I was in high school. Our manager got called to a store in a different city because a manager had an accident melting chocolates for their chocolate-dipped cookies. I ended up having to work for the majority of the day with an equally lazy buddy of mine, slinging cookies and taking orders for cookie cakes while the mall was packed. Around 4 in the afternoon, and about $1,600 in sales, a gentleman in a button-down Mrs. Fields cookie shirt came to our counter telling us he had to do a midday drop for us for whatever money we had taken in the day. I let him in the back, he tinkers for a second on the computer and ends up taking our deposits. So now it's an hour before closing time. My boss is now back at our location to help us close. He starts going through our paperwork and money and realizes we're about $1,600 short. I explained to him that Mr. So-and-so came down to our location to do a midday drop since he didn't work. He told me Mr. So-and-so didn't exist and called the corporate office. It turned out this guy had gone over to a dozen Mrs. Fields in the area and robbed over $10,000 worth of money. They never figured out who it was. I ended up being fired over it with my buddy. We stole a giant cookie cake as a compensation. Worth it. Story 8. I didn't work at the store, but I was dragged by a friend of mine to Walmart to help him get a TV on Black Friday a few years ago. Let me start by saying that I don't even particularly like crowds. I'm almost not an aggressive person. I had heard lots and lots of Black Friday horror stories and had done pretty well avoiding them. However, about 6 years ago, my friend asked me to help him get a second flat-screen television for his family, since at the time, Walmart had a policy that a single person could only reserve one item before midnight. That sounded pretty right. I just walk in and say I want the item. Simple as that. I was wrong. Very wrong. I showed up at my local Walmart and there are people everywhere. I live in Tennessee and everyone is pretty serious about Walmart here. These people thought we were the worst of the worst. Several of them looked like they hadn't seen daylight since last year's sales. Anyway, I make my way through the crowd of southern fried faces and scoot through the television section. We were informed that there are only 2 of the televisions that my friend wanted left in the reserve list. Awesome. We tell the woman that we want the televisions and she just sort of laughs. She then informs me that we have to reach over other people for hours and keep our hands on the televisions that we want. When midnight rolls around, they will unwrap all the items and tell everyone to go. That is when we could take them. This is where it gets good. We're waiting there for a couple of hours, and we start to notice how many people are disappointed that there aren't any more of the TV that we have our hands on. Some women even started to cry. I obviously looked distressed with all the action going on, so two little old women who were next to me told me that it wouldn't be that bad. I would be out of there before I knew it. I smiled and thanked them for their kind words just as it was nearing midnight. The employees removed all the plastic from the displays of boxes and waited for the announcement. The PA system overhead comes on and just says, "Go!" Then all hell breaks loose. Apparently, all the people that were disappointed that there weren't enough TVs had a plan. They just rushed over and started pushing people out of the way. They ran to the roped-off other sides of the boxes and were trying to rip them away from the other customers who had been waiting in line for hours. Some of them were even succeeding. I was kind of caught up in the moment and was staring at what was going on while being pushed on all sides. My friend grabs my arm and tells me to hurry and get my TV in the cart before everyone starts fighting. Just as I focus back into reality, a woman starts pulling on the other side of my TV box. I mean, she's really pulling it. I just hold on with all my strength and decide to just let them tire themselves out. That's when I noticed the two nice elderly ladies behind me. One was on the floor, the other was wailing and crying for God to help her. God didn't help her that day, but I sure did. While still holding onto my box with one hand, I reached into the sea of people and grabbed the television that the older women had their eyes on. I grabbed it off the shelf and started screaming for everyone to back up. That's when they started hitting me. Women were doing everything they could possibly do to make me let go of the old lady's television. I wouldn't. On the other hand, literally several women were on the other side of my original box trying to pull it away from my grip. I yelled out to my friend to help the older women up, who were literally being buried by women falling over themselves trying to rush up to the displays. As soon as they're out of the way, I just pull the television out, put it in the cart, and then grab my original box with both hands. I may not be an aggressive man, but I wasn't about to lose the original TV that I came in for. I got a great grip on the box and just pushed it towards all the women who were pulling on it. This caused them all to just fall into a big comedic pile on the floor. I made my escape from the sea of ladies and proceeded to the checkout counters. Now don't get me wrong, folks. It was awful and I've never gone back to a Black Friday since. I was covered in cuts and bruises. But it was all worth it just to see the look on those two ladies' faces. They were so grateful that I helped them get the television. It was apparently a gift for one of the women's grandsons. She informed me that she didn't have the money to get one that wasn't on the sale price and had brought her friend to help her get the thing. They were so happy. They were just hugging me and telling me how I saved their Christmas. They immediately offered me what money they had for help, but I of course denied it. And that is how I saved Christmas and knocked a bunch of women on the floor. Story 9. I was working in a video store and we marked down absolutely everything, including our selection of hundreds of used movies to insane degrees. I mean 50% or more in most cases. Used movies were practically giveaways. Among the usual mobs were this guy and his wife who walked in with a box of those giant professional-grade trash bags. They proceeded to fill up 4 of these trash bags. At one point, they were just going through the used bins and throwing things in there. Naturally, then when they got to the register, they had quite a few doubles. Every time they would hit a double, they'd remove it. Because of the sheer volume of movies, they had a tough time keeping up with everything and were taking forever to check out. Luckily, my manager came up and, acknowledging the increasingly angry lines of people behind them, told the couple they could either buy everything they had in the bags regardless of whether it was a double or leave. After some arguments, the husband eventually grabbed the bags and upended them, spilling the DVDs on the floor right in front of the register. They then left. The best part? Customers started to go after the movies on the floor like vultures before we could get to them. Well, at least he didn't have to pick them up. Story 10. I think it was around Black Friday 2004, and I was a cart pusher at a Walmart. In this particular year, Walmart offered a plasma TV at an extremely low price, which was the hottest deal of the year. A man showed up the Tuesday before the big sale with a tent, ice coolers, generator, TV, and everything he needed to brave the 3 nights he would be staying over. He continuously talked about being first in line, how he was going to get the plasma TV, and how he was hosting the next Super Bowl party, so this was just going to be the best thing ever. Come around Thursday night, I showed up to my shift and he was still there in a jolly mood. Thankful he was about to be able to go home and sleep in his own bed. The news came and he did a short interview and explained what he was waiting for, how he was able to get the time off, he was a truck driver, and was overall excited over the whole ordeal, and prided himself for toughing out the cold. The line for the entrance wrapped around the whole front of the door and about another 300 yards or so past the store with thousands of people waiting to get in. At 5 a.m., the doors opened and the man went straight to the plasma TVs to see that they were all gone. What happened? The garden center at Walmart opened up about 10 seconds before the front doors, and those that came the night before scooped up all 15 plasma TVs. This guy who had been there since Tuesday afternoon was dumbfounded and argued with management but was stonewalled and told there was nothing that could be done. That guy's Thanksgiving was a bust for sure. Story 11. I ran an electronics department in a large retail store and was a veteran to Black Friday. My team always had everything under control. We had tickets for everything that would sell out quickly, we knew exact numbers and where everything was, and had signs for lineups for hourly deals. We were always prepared and never had an issue. One year, the district manager decided to observe our store during Black Friday. She stopped by my department in the thick of it to see how things were going on my end. It was insanely busy, of course, but we had everything managed. She was carrying a piece of paper which she told me had some unadvertised markdowns for old inventory. This was news to me. She glanced at it, grabbed my phone, and made a store-wide announcement that we had JVC digital camcorders marked down to $49. The regular price, $199. She was making the announcement. I stood there with my jaw open. A sense of fear came over me. I knew the model that was just marked down, and we did have it in inventory. The problem was, we only had 4. The store was packed, and a fast-moving zombie horde of shoppers immediately swamped my department from all sides. It was some Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead stuff. As the horde swept over my department, I saw my district manager hightail it out of there. I have never been in more fear for my life. I like to imagine that a few minutes later, he announced on the PA, "We are now sold out of the JVC digital camcorders. Sorry for the inconvenience." Story 12. I saw an old woman crying her eyes out because her granddaughter stole $850 from her purse the morning of Black Friday. She had her shopping route mapped out, including what stores to hit for what sale, when, and where. She was buying for everyone in the family. Your typical sweet grandmother that everyone loves. The only reason I know this is because I was a at the time and my running girlfriend said she had a great way to make money. When I went there to pick her up and saw her gram crying, I knew what was up. We rushed to my car, already called the dealer, and I started backing down the driveway. I said, "Let me see the money. I don't believe you." Before she would tell me one thing and then give half the money knowing I would cover the other half, I walked back into the house, gave the money back to her grandmother, and apologized carefully, explaining what we did wasn't right, but we were so at the time it made sense. She looked at me the way a hunter looks at its prey right before it does the mercy shot to finish the job. She said, "Get help," and I did. The girl didn't need help and quickly fell flat in her face and got Hep C and I think HIV shortly after leaving me for a real man. I'm currently 2 years sober and this Black Friday will be 3. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you made it this far, I'm sure you'll also enjoy. What's the scariest story you've ever heard? Story 3 was so creepy. See you in that video.